But I must tell you, I've made bad investments. I've made good investments. Some work out, some don't. This is a bad investment. It's not my first. It won't be my last. But luckily, I make more good investments than bad ones. So you have to deal with reality. You made a good point that I learned a long time ago as an investor. So I don't take concentrated institutional risk. My holdings are in many different locations for exactly this reason. So, and that is, if you're a fiduciary for an operating company, as I am, you do that just out of habit because you never know what's going to happen to any one institution at any one time. And that is our situation with FTX. However, we took a huge hit. I'm a shareholder, was a shareholder of FTX International, a shareholder of FTX US. We had multiple accounts on the FTX platform, which are completely locked out now. They have zero balances. I've talked to many other institutional investors that use the platform. They also have zero balances. Obviously, everybody's talking to their accountants and lawyers and auditors and compliance departments about this. It's an extraordinary situation. But at the same time, if it has a silver lining, what I think it's going to be is, I was just yesterday at the governor's convention in Orlando talking to lawmakers. The amount of pressure regulators are getting today about this situation is extreme. It's the number one issue now in financial services. So these bills like the Transparency Act for stablecoins and the Digital Commodity Act, which have been, sitting around, floating around forever, not moving forward for whatever reason you can speculate, are now getting new focus. And we're going to have to push some regulation. In the meantime, I'm moving my assets off all unregulated exchanges, and we're putting them in Canada, where we can find a regulated exchange company called BitBuy, public, and the name of the company is WonderFi that trades there. So we bought shares. We own a piece of the company, and so that gives us access to the statements the company's making. In addition, it's regulated by the OSC, which is the equivalent of the SEC, the Ontario Securities Commission. There is no commingling of accounts. The assets cannot be lent out. They are scrutinized by the regulator. Proof of assets scrutinized by the regulator. Yeah. So that's what we're doing. We're moving it all there. Same time, I have a fiduciary obligation to protect these assets. I'm certainly as hell not putting them in an unregulated exchange. No chance. And I'm not putting it on an exchange that's in litigation with the SEC. No chance. I'm not putting it anywhere that doesn't have the scrutiny of a full-time regulator looking at each account on an ongoing basis. And the only place I can find that's safe right now, as you suggested, the most advanced regulator is in Canada. That's where the assets are going. And that's where they're staying until we get this, whatever you want to call it, shitstorm worked out, because I'm not putting assets where they're not regulated. Yeah, well, let me disclose, let me be completely transparent. I'm an Irish citizen. I'm a Canadian citizen. I'm an Emirati citizen. I also have all kinds of assets and investments in the US where I'm an investor and I pay tax. I can put these assets anywhere I want. I can choose any jurisdiction I want. I have access to the EU through my Irish passport. Obviously, I could put them in Dubai if I wish. The most advanced regulatory environment right now that I can find, the very first license ever granted worldwide, was to BitBuy, that is a broker-dealer attached to a crypto exchange in Canada. In my opinion, that is the safest place on earth to put assets. So I can also see that it's also regulated as a public company. It's listed in Canada as WonderFi. You're going to see billions of dollars leave unregulated exchanges looking for somewhere in the world where they can be put safely. And that right now is Canada. That's where my assets are going. To force regulation. We can't move forward without regulation. And we've been stalled out as the various regulators fight the turf wars over who should regulate what. For example, should stablecoin be regulated by the Fed that oversees currency, or should it be regulated by the SEC? Or should it be regulated by the agency that does payment systems? While they fight, there's no regulation and we can't advance. I feel terrible for all the retail investors that got wiped out here, but this whole industry can't advance as it should without regulation, because we can't attract sovereign wealth and pension to it. They refuse to invest because they have no platform to do it on a compliant basis. And they're certainly not going to invest on an unregulated, rogue platform. I don't pick any one of them. These unregulated platforms are never going to get institutional capital after what's happened here, ever. Not now, not ever. So the whole point is we need this regulation. In addition, crypto's not going away. It's too productive. It's too useful. It provides a lot of services with transparency and lower cost than the existing systems do today. And I'm talking about, whether you want ACH or a SWIFT transfer or a Fed wire, these things are really old and inefficient and very expensive. Just on payment systems alone, I'd like to use a stable coin for my businesses, and I intend to do that as soon as the regulations pass. Now, along with others, I'm not the only one, I'm going to be spending a lot more time in Washington really firing up my voice on getting this regulation through. I'm not the only person that's going to be doing this. I'm tired of waiting for it. I think we're very, very inefficient, and it's time to move. And this onion that's being unpeeled is going to get much worse by the time this is over. The amount of hedge funds, you just detailed one of them. There are countless others that are going to go to zero. So this is going to have a very, very powerful impact in terms of loss of capital. And I got to tell you something on a more personal level, which, obviously people don't want to hear right now, but I've met Sam multiple times. I talked to him last Thursday, actually, when this thing was, boiling over, trying to get the actual amount he was trying to raise, because there was a lot of interest in institutional and sovereign wealth at the time in buying a piece of FTX before all the regulation, before the whole thing collapsed. But his parents, I mean, you've never met nicer people than that. Sam, if 9 out of 10 people I talked to that have met him don't think he has an evil bone in his body. The guy was a really interesting guy. Now, look, he's going to have to suffer the slings and arrows, but I still like the guy. I feel very sorry for him, but he's a good person. And at the end of the day, he got himself in a bad place. Yes, it was written down to zero over the weekend. I spoke to many other institutional investors who had assets on the platform. Because we are audited in many cases by the same firms. The auditing firms were talking to each other. The lawyers were talking to each other. We have to market in our operating company every 12 hours, as I said earlier. So we mark to market on Monday morning at 9 o'clock, zero on our investment in FTX International, zero on our investment FTX USA, zero on all assets which had disappeared from our accounts. So that was a tough day. That's a hit. My biggest concern now, and I talked to the auditors about this, and we talked about this earlier, is where can I put them? And for now, it's Canada. It's BitBuy, account there. And now we are monitoring that account with the regulator beside us every day. It's the only country I can find that has such an advanced regulation. The OSC order is in my view, it's a personal opinion, the very best regulator in the world for crypto assets. And the oldest dealer broker there, or broker dealer there, is BitBuy. They've been regulated longer than anybody else. That's where I'm putting my dollars and my crypto.